All right, good evening. Um, and I'm first going to read the statement. During this declared state of emergency, this meeting will be conducted in accordance with California Government Code Section 54953 as authorized by resolution of the City Council. Please contact city.clerk@mountainview.gov to obtain a copy of the applicable resolution. All members of the Human Relations Commission will participate in the meeting by video conference with no physical meeting location. As noted on the meeting agenda, members of the public may provide oral public comments during the public comment period for an item by joining the Zoom webinar at mountainview.gov/meeting. Any emails received by 5 p.m. today were forwarded to the commission. And now I will ask the assistant to the city manager to proceed with roll call.
Commissioner Ball?
Here.
Commissioner Wakidu?
Here.
Commissioner Solomon?
Here.
Vice Chair Sylvester?
Here.
Chair Lynn?
I'm here.
And Commissioner Webb is not here yet. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my understanding is he's joining later. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is minutes approval. The minutes for the March 3rd, 2022 meeting have been delivered to the commission members and copies posted on the City Hall bulletin board. If there are no corrections or additions, a motion is in order to approve these minutes. Are there any comments or questions from the commissioners on this item? All right, seeing none, I will move on to the next section, which is oral communication.
We need to do them.
And I will
Oh,
make a
I'm
motion.
sorry. I always do this. Sorry. Thanks for keeping me honest. All right. So
A motion and a second.
I'll second.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. So the meetings have
We'll just do a roll call vote. Sorry.
Yeah. So we'll take a roll call vote then.
Okay. Commissioner Ball?
Yep.
Commissioner Wakidu?
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes.
Commissioner Webb? Vice Chair Sylvester?
Yes.
Chair Lynn?
Yes.
So dirty. I don't know how you see out here. Excuse me.
Great. All right. So assistant to the city manager, is that sufficient for what you need to move on to the next item?
Yes, we can move on to item 4, oral communications from the public.
Okay, great. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during this section. State law prohibits the commission from acting on non-agendized items. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment? If so, please click raise hand on the button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. And the assistant to the city manager will display a timer on the screen. And I see one attendee raising their hand. So my understanding is I think I pressed this allow to talk. Yes, so I've made you a panelist and you can unmute yourself. Is the assistant to the city manager ready with the timer? Okay.
I will share my timer.
Great.
Hello, everyone. Let me know if you're ready. Oh, I see the timer. Fantastic. My name is Nancy Brumeau. My pronouns are she, her. I am a member of the Santa Clara County Commission on the Status of Women, although I am representing only myself and not the commission tonight. I'm also a member of the Santa Clara County CDAW Task Force, which recently sunsetted after presenting our recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. I'm also a member of the United Nations San Francisco Ratify CDAW movement and a founder of the 2022 US CDAW Challenge. I'm here to bring you a quick update on local CDAW initiatives and ask the HRC Commission to consider adding CDAW to your work plan for the coming year. As many of you know, CEDAW is the acronym we use for the United Nations Treaty and stands for the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. CEDAW is also fully inclusive and since its inception has included women and all those who identify as women. It is also intersectional by its definition, and under CEDAW, government has the responsibility to provide equality of opportunity for education, employment, and housing for all persons, regardless of their race, color, gender, religion, national origin, age, sexual orientation, or disability. We know that equality for women and girls has had a long way to go before the pandemic, but now are even more disproportionately struggling with high job and livelihood losses, education disruptions, and increased burdens of unpaid care work. Women's health services, poorly funded before the pandemic, faced major disruptions, undermining women's sexual and reproductive health. And despite women's critical role in responding to COVID-19, including as frontline healthcare workers, they are still largely bypassed for leadership positions they deserve. CEDAW provides the framework and oversight to analyze local programs, projects, services, and initiatives, and hold local jurisdictions accountable for equitable services. CEDAW provides the accountability that allows us to realize the promises of DEI and social justice reforms. We are seeing CEDAW resolutions and ordinances gain strength and momentum across the state and the nation. In many instances, jurisdictions are deciding to skip the resolutions and go straight to an ordinance. The city and county of San Francisco led the way over 20 years ago, and since then we've seen many other jurisdictions implement CEDAW. Most recently, the county of San Diego, county of Los Angeles, city of Irvine, with plans for resolutions and ordinances in both Marin and Sonoma counties underway in many other areas. The city of San Jose has begun implementing the ordinance they passed in 2020, and the county of Santa Clara is in the process of exploring a permanent ordinance to replace the temporary ordinance, which just sunsetted. As I mentioned, I'm here to ask your commission to begin the process of studying CEDAW by adding it to your work plan. If possible, I would love to come back and give a brief presentation I call CEDAW in a nutshell. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, I actually have a question for the speaker, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Nancy, first of all, thank you for being here and thank you for bringing this very important issue to us, both about gender equality and specifically about CEDAW. I'm curious a little bit more about what your ask is. What are you asking the Human Relations Commission to look at when you say look at adopting CEDAW? What are you hoping that a body like us could do?
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I apologize for the quick, I had to try to get everything in 3 minutes. For example, typically a commission like yours would work on basically studying it and potentially making a recommendation to your city council that the city might want to seriously consider adopting CEDAW. And we have seen this happening. It's now rolling out across not only the state, but the nation. I don't know how familiar everyone is, but of course we'd like to have CEDAW ratified at the national level, but the beauty of it is we don't have to wait for that. We can do it locally. We have CEDAW ordinances in the city of San Francisco, city of LA, city of Berkeley, city of Irvine, and we have more and more coming. In fact, nationwide, Toledo just adopted, Fairfax, Virginia, Honolulu, Miami. There's places all over the country, and so we would love to see Mountain View take the first and the next steps to getting to a place. And basically, CEDAW allows for stronger accountability and analysis. It's very much driven by data, and we all know how important data is. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to the speaker. So at this time, I think if there are no other questions from the commission for the speaker, I will remove her from the panel. All right, and then we will move to any other, or if there are any other attendees who would like to make public comment, please raise your hand now or press *9. I don't see any other hands raised, so I will go ahead and move to the next item. So section 5 in the agenda is for unfinished business of the subcommittees, but it's recommended that we move to section 6.1 first instead, which is new business, having to do mostly tonight with the funding recommendations for the fiscal year 2022-23 for our annual action plan. So if it's all right with the rest of the commission members, I'll go ahead and move that new business forward. So I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. This is not a formal motion, so we'll go ahead and move to new business first. So we'll do section 6.1. The HRC will be holding a public hearing to hear funding recommendations for fiscal year 2022-23 annual action plan and make funding recommendations for the City Council's consideration. Action will be taken on this item tonight. So Housing and Neighborhood Services Manager Michaela Hellman-Tincher will lead the discussion and provide the presentation. If Michaela, if you're ready, I think we can start your presentation now.
Thank you, Chair Lynn, and thank you, commissioners, for welcoming me back. I'm joined tonight by Wayne Chen, the Assistant Community Development Director for the city. We also have one of our consultants in the attendee list. If there's any questions that we need to turn to her too, we will do so. So as the chair said, tonight we are considering the funding recommendations for the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual action plan. We spoke a lot about what the annual action plan is at our last presentation to you. And a couple of things are of note this year that we mentioned last time. The first is that this is the second year of a 2-year public services cycle. So all the funding recommendations for public services were already made last year, and the funding amounts that we are proposing for this year are the ones that you pushed forward and that the City Council approved last year. Additionally, there's only one capital funding recommendation this year for some of the reasons we talked about previously, and I'll get more into that later. In order to do an annual action plan, we have a citizen participation plan as required by HUD, and we've undertaken that. The public comment period is open for our annual action plan. We put notices in the Mountain View Voice and the Palo Alto Daily Post. We also sent emails to an interested parties list, the Housing Authority, several of our nonprofit partners, asking them to also share with their clients, and also several property managers for affordable housing developments, also asking them to share with their clients. We made postings, physical postings and website postings in multiple languages. And our notice is also linked to how to access the multiple languages with instructions in those languages. Tonight's Human Relations Commission meeting is an important part of the process where we've invited people to come speak. And then again at the April 26th City Council meeting. So this chart is a little bit tricky, so I'll go spend some time on it, but this indicates the funds that we have available that we're proposing we use in this year's annual action plan. The first big category, the CDBG FY 2022-2023 allocation, we are estimating we will be receiving about $600,000. That's what we typically receive. There's an asterisk there because we haven't received our allocation amount from the federal government yet. That typically follows the budget being signed. And so that hasn't, the budget's been signed, but we haven't yet received our allocation. So, you know, we frequently build this language in, and this language has already been built into our annual action plan. You know, we will do a proportional reallocation if the funding is higher or lower. And we're proposing to split up that allocation in the amounts that we've talked about previously, with the percentages based on what's allowed in for the expenditure of those funds. Similarly, for our home FY 2022-23 allocation, we're assuming we're going to get around $270,000. And similarly, we're allocating them based on the percentages allowed in the home guidelines. This next section is what we call unallocated funds. And it's a combination of two different funding amounts. The first is program income that we received this year that we were not expecting to receive. That means last year we had anticipated some program income and we had built it into our spending plan, but we received more than that. So that's built into these amounts. And then the other thing that's built into these amounts is funding that we had set aside in the previous year for administration, so 2 years ago, that we ended up not spending and we have available to spend again. And then this last category is what we estimate for next year to receive program income. $100,000 is what we typically estimate. I think we might revise our process to have even better estimates going forward, but this is what our standard has been for many years. And so all of that adds up to about $1.7 million. Sherilyn, I see that there's a hand up. I don't know if you would like me to take questions now or later.
I see that the hand is Commissioner Ball. Commissioner Ball, if it's quick, do you want to go ahead and ask it now?
Yeah, it has to do with this slide, actually. I was curious if there's any information about the source of program income, given that we're usually supporting nonprofits. I'm unclear how that is generating income.
Yes, great question. So our program income typically comes from affordable housing projects that we've given loans to, and they pay back the loans over time. I'm pretty new to the city, so I don't have a lot of history on exactly how the loan terms and how they were put together, but that is one of my goals for this year, is to kind of investigate that. So as we put together loan terms for affordable housing projects in the future, we can better estimate what our program income will be. Excellent question. We don't receive any program income from the nonprofits besides the affordable housing developers. Okay. This slide is exactly the same money, just categorized in a different way to help understand what we're proposing. So in total, we're proposing that we allocate $147,000 towards administration, $90,000 towards public services, and about $1.5 million towards capital projects. And again, that adds up to that same $1.7 million number that you saw on the previous slide. And you'll see here for the CDBG and home, this is inclusive of all those different sources that were on the previous slide. This chart is a chart that you might be familiar with because it's from last year. It's a little small, but that's because we were able to serve so many nonprofits last year. This is the funding that was approved last year for the 2-year public services cycle. So you'll see here, this is the 2-year funding approved. This is the amount we approved last year for year 1. Some of the nonprofits received additional ARP funding. This is what we encumbered last year. And then this is the amount that we are encumbering this year, which results in that $90,000 number. Something that I think if you investigate further, you'll notice is that most of the nonprofits received a large amount of money last year and are receiving it significantly less this year. And that's because of 2 things. One is we had a large amount of money available and we wanted to make sure to get those resources out the door quickly. And the other is that we knew that the need was very, very high last year because of the pandemic. And we wanted to make sure that the nonprofits had anything that they wanted as much as they could use. That being said, the way that we've written the contracts is that these funds can be spent over a 19-month period. So if they haven't spent down this money yet by the end of this fiscal year, that's okay. They can continue to spend it into the next year. And I think many, many of our nonprofit grantees will be doing so. So this was mainly meant to give them flexibility to spend this entire 2-year funding amount over the 2 years with more money up front when we knew there was a large amount of need. And that was something that I think you all weighed in quite a lot on. I wasn't around for that. So thank you for your guidance as we worked on that. As I mentioned in our last meeting, we did not do a NOFA for capital programs this year. It was based on a couple of things. One was a general lack of interest that we've had over many years for these capital projects among our nonprofit partners. One was a significant administrative burden that we've gotten feedback on that our nonprofit partners have had to endure when they take these capital funds. And then a third one was that HUD has been encouraging us to try to leverage and consolidate our funds when it is efficient, which in this case it would be. And then the last reason is we do have a goal of providing more affordable housing, specifically to low-income households. And we have a project that has a funding gap. Also, it already has these funds designated towards it. So the administrative burden of accepting more funds would be almost nothing. So when we saw we would have more funds that we could designate, we thought this would be a good recommendation to make. So you'll recall that last year, the Crestview Hotel was designated $3.7 million. That's something you all recommended. Since that time, we've had quite a large number of community meetings, both a couple of large scale ones, and then I've had many small, either one-on-one or small group meetings with the community. The county has designated $7 million towards the project. And they also, with our support, submitted a home key application to get a very large amount of available state funding towards the project. And it's a uniquely positioned site for home key application because home key specifically, the way home key is set up, rehabs of existing projects are probably the most attractive for the program and the most likely to succeed. And a happy thing about home key is that there's a timeline that goes with it, that the units have to be, once the award is given, the units have to be occupied within 15 months, which is extraordinarily fast in the affordable housing world and extremely exciting to us with the idea of actually getting people into these units in the future. There's a developer selection process underway that the county has led, and Wayne and I have participated in as city representatives, and it should be wrapping up soon. And there's also been, specifically through the community meetings, a refinement of what the best use for the site is, which is nearly all the units would be for extremely low income households, some of whom are formerly homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. There's an interest in making some of the units available to transition aged youth. This is youth who are between ages 18 and 25 who may be at risk of homelessness. And also there's an interest in making more family units, which means probably definitely knocking down some of the walls between the existing hotel units and turning them into 2 and 3 bedroom units. We've also, through this process, gotten a better understanding of what the likely costs are. And there is a funding gap in the current pro formas that we are evaluating. And so that's why we thought it would be worthwhile to designate additional funds. So the recommendation would be $1.5 million for the Crestview Hotel renovation and acquisition, made up of unallocated funds plus our regular allocation. So here's where we are tonight. We're meeting with you all to go over these recommendations. We'll be going to the City Council with your comments and the comments from the public and added to the draft action plan. And then we need to submit the action plan to the federal government in May or June. Typically the deadline is May 15th, but I'm expecting that it will be extended because we haven't yet received our allocation. And that's what's happened in the past. So these are the recommendations: to recommend and forward the annual action plan to the City Council, to recommend $1.5 million allocation for capital projects, which would be the Crestview Hotel. And then related to that, this is the language we've talked about. If the funding is different, we would adjust accordingly. I will say one thing I forgot to mention, which is if it comes to pass that because we're still refining the funding plan for the Crestview Hotel, if it comes to pass that the money is not needed, we will certainly not wastefully spend it, and we'll probably come back with an amendment to designate it towards other affordable housing projects. And with that, I'm happy to turn it back to the chair.
Thank you for that presentation. I see two hands up. I'll let Vice Chair Sylvester go first, Commissioner Ball, if that's okay. I don't know. I'm just going back and forth. So all right, Vice Chair Sylvester, go ahead.
Thank you very much for that great presentation. Really well done. Thank you. I have a quick question relating to the community sentiment about this project. I haven't been following it recently as carefully as I'd like. So I was wondering if you could give us an update on what the community is saying and how they feel about the project. Thank you.
Sure. I'm certainly not one to speak on behalf of the community, but I'll share a summary of what we've experienced so far. And to be fair, this hasn't been in the public conversation for quite some time. So we haven't had an opportunity to talk with community members about the project probably since October or November. At that time, the community was highly, highly engaged. We had several hundred people come to our community meetings. Several hundred people came to the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors meeting when they allocated the funding. And there was a lot of people who spoke very highly in favor of it, especially a lot of neighbors said, yes, I want this in my community. There were also a lot of community members who were very concerned about having it in their community and said, I'm not sure this is the right location. I'm not sure this is the right population. So I would say it's, maybe a highly discussed issue, certainly. And I think it's probably going to continue to be. And I think that's luckily, we have a plan for more community outreach as the developer gets on board and continues to refine the plan. So I'm hopeful that this high community engagement will help to lead to something that everybody can be proud of in the end.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Ball, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I also have not been following this project super closely, and I have a set of sort of detailed or logistical questions about the Crestview Hotel, so we understand what it is we're being asked to recommend funding for. So the first actually is, so my understanding, we're taking what was a hotel, redeveloping it in some form for affordable housing. Are the resulting units planned to be rentals or owner-owned property?
Great question. Rentals.
Okay. Who would be managing that property on an ongoing basis?
So the developer will select a property manager that's experienced in affordable housing, and the county and the city as funders will have some oversight as to who they select. And that's pretty typical for all affordable housing projects. And there's frankly like a handful of property managers that do affordable housing property management in our area.
Got it. And then when we're allocating funding for this hotel, or the city's funding, the county's funding, all these different things, is that structured? Are those grants? Or you mentioned previously for some of these we do loans, or like, are we actually acquiring the property as the city and its own? Like, how is that actually playing out?
Yes. So in this particular case, the county will be acquiring the property. They're receiving the home key funds that will allow them to acquire the property. The way that we pretty much always structure our allocations of funding is in a loan. There are different kinds of affordable housing loans that you can do, but typically they're structured in such a way that the city gets paid back sort of after all the other costs are covered, so that basically any revenue that is beyond what the costs are, paying the developer and paying for keeping the place up and paying for all the supportive services that make sure that everybody gets what they need, then they start paying back their lenders, specifically the government lenders in that way. So, we sort of are the last pay, but we do eventually get payments.
Got it. And then two more questions. So one is, you've mentioned that there's lots of different funds being sought for this. Is there a sense of the total budget required for the Crestview Hotel project? Like, is what we're doing here a meaningful contribution, or is this a drop in the bucket, or like, what are we talking about here?
Excellent question. I don't have the total budget memorized, so I'm going to just share some generalities. So please don't hold me to them, and I'm happy to get more details. And to be fair, we're still working it through the potential costs with the potential developers. But I recall there being something in the magnitude of the high 30s to $40 million cost. Most of that is for acquisition, and then there's a large amount for the rehabilitation. And then there's of course additional costs for operating subsidies and staff support and things like that. So ours, if we do this particular designation, the 1.5 plus the 3.7, that's a little over $5 million. It's a pretty significant help. It's significantly lower on a per door basis than we would typically contribute for an affordable housing development. But because we're able to leverage other funds and because this isn't new construction, it feels like an appropriate amount for the city.
Got it. And then the last question I had is in one of the documents that I was reading in the preparatory process, there was a note that we need to continue to seek out more funds for the Crestview project to be viable, that this is not going to be sufficient. Do we have a sense of how likely it is that we are unable to make this project viable? And then if so, like what would happen if the additional funds were not obtained?
Got it. I think I may have worded that in a somewhat confusing manner. Really what I meant was the funding at this point is not viable. There is a funding gap. That's why we're recommending this additional 1.5 million. I think we're going to be close to closing the funding gap if that's the case. Developers can also always seek out additional funds from other local agencies like the county, or they can seek out private loans that are sometimes more expensive if it's a small gap to cover.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Ball. I see Commissioner Solomon, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's very helpful. I have a question about the priority populations for the Crestview housing. And you did, McKelly, you did review those briefly. And I believe from the documentation that we received, I believe that currently the intent is to serve 50 families or households. And you mentioned income requirements and also folks who were, I believe, unhoused or at risk of being unhoused, transitional youth, for example. And I was wondering for individuals and families who are living in RVs or other vehicles, where they fall in that priority range. Is it based on their income, or is there a kind of prioritization of folks who are in vehicles if they wish to transition into a different type of housing?
Yes. So the population of community members who live in vehicles, many of them have been assessed in the same way that we assess anybody who's become unhoused in our community. There's something called the vulnerability index that the county performs. And based on where someone falls on that vulnerability index, they are sort of put in a different category and put in a waiting list for units that are meant for people in that category. And so one of the categories is called permanent supportive housing, one is called rapid rehousing, and then there's sort of a low intervention category. And probably almost all the units would be one of those three categories. So hopefully some of the people who are living in vehicles would be eligible for these units. I will say that at the current moment, the units need to be filled in the same way that most of the counties, the Measure A units are filled, which is through the community queue. And so it's based on which category and then the vulnerability index, basically whoever's next in line. So people sort of need to already be on the queue. I know there's been a very large amount of work to get Mountain View residents into the queue. And we've worked really closely with our nonprofit partners to make sure they are. But I think Wayne and I both have an interest in doing even more work to find more immediate pathways to get some of our community members into our units, especially because, frankly, these are some of the first units of this kind that we've been able to build in Mountain View for a very long time, since Eagle Park. But we have many, many more coming. And so we would like to find as many pathways as we can to serve the Mountain View residents who are living in vehicles.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Solomon. I don't see, are there any other commissioners with questions? If not, then I just have a few, although my fellow commissioners already, I think, went through a lot of the ones that I already had. Just following up on what we just discussed with Commissioner Solomon, Michaela, I'll rewind. Thank you for the great project, and also your hard work on Crestview. It remains like a really exciting project, I think, for the community. So is it my understanding that since, like, you said that the individuals who will be prioritized for this housing will be sort of whoever's next in line in the community queue for the county. So does that mean that there's a potential that, or is there any sort of room to have folks who are sort of at risk of losing housing or homelessness in Mountain View to be prioritized for that? Or is that, it's basically like the county's, like how the county is going to administer it countywide?
So we're still working through it with the county. I think if you were to ask me what it is as of this very moment, I would say it's probably the same way that it always happens, which is through the community queue, whoever first come, first serve. And there are quite a large number of Mountain View residents on the community queue, but it's still, could be anywhere. And that's been true, for example, because we haven't had these units in Mountain View, Mountain View residents have been housed in San Jose and South County through the same process. But that being said, I think we are exploring opportunities to potentially do some more prioritization, because Mountain View does typically have a live work preference whenever we possibly can. So we might have some more opportunities to do so. It might involve more funding. We're still exploring that.
Okay, great.
And Michaela, may I add on just to one piece to what you just said? And good evening, everyone. Wayne Chen, Assistant Community Development Director. So the one part that we work really closely on, I would say one of the additional parts that we work really closely on with our partners is to find opportunities to really address the local need, as well as to help address the regional issue. And one of the challenges with local preferences is fair housing laws, both state and federal. So that's why we work really closely to figure out how we can address the regional and local need, but staying on this side of the line for fair housing. So it is a really important piece of all of our affordable housing projects, and we're really mindful of this particular piece. So we've been evaluating other potential opportunities to try to get folks, for example, living in RVs in Mountain View into affordable housing. We'll continue to work on that, but it's one of those pieces where it's not a simple answer, even though it seems quite clear that if we can queue up folks and move them into the appropriate housing and to the next phase of housing, that would be great. So we're looking for opportunities, but it's the fair housing laws piece that make it a little bit more challenging.
Thank you for that. And then another question is what are the other Project Home Key projects for the county? If you can speak a little bit about like the existing track record for these types of projects. I'm just curious.
Well, I'm happy to share that the very first Project Home Key project in our county, and the one at which the governor announced the second tranche of funding, so it must have been a success, is in Mountain View. It's the Life Moves Project Home Key transitional housing site. It's on Leghorn. It's quite exceptional. You should ask Wayne about it because he did a very large amount of work to make it happen. So that was one of the very first ones. And the other one last year was in Milpitas, at a hotel in Milpitas, which, I think there have been some challenges at that site and some lessons learned from the county that they've shared with us, and they are applying in their lessons learned for this particular project. I believe that countywide, there might be something like 9 applications For Project Home Key, I'm not sure that they will all get funded. A couple of them, some are in San Jose, I think some are in Santa Clara, I think Palo Alto has one. So, you know, I think the general consensus is after people observed what happened with Home Key round 1, they thought, we want this in our town. And so they went for round 2. And I think Mountain View can take some pride for our great work and in showing what can be done.
Great, thanks for that. That's the extent of my questions. If there are any others from the commissioners. I don't see any. Sorry about the awkward pause. Are there any questions? So if there are no more questions, we can have public comment on this item. Would any member of the public on the line like to provide comment on this item? If so, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. And I see one hand raised, Georgia, and assistant to the city manager, do we have a time limit? Is it going to be 3 minutes again?
It'll be 3 minutes, yes.
Okay, great. So I will move you over to panelists so that you can unmute yourself, and the assistant to the city manager will start the clock for you to make your comments.
Hello, I'm hoping you can hear me. This is Georgia Basile. I'm the directing attorney of Senior Adults Legal Assistance, you know, as SALA. We provide free legal services to Mountain View residents 62 or older, targeting clients that are low income or at risk of loss of their independence. Our current CDBG funding from Mountain View supports our services to your elder residents, and we are so very grateful for that. We're pleased the action plan includes recommended funding for SALA to continue our services, and we hope you will approve that. We have been providing our services remotely and primarily by phone during COVID. When in-person services can be reinstated, it is our hope that we can again be providing our in-person services at Mountain View Senior Center. I just wanted to remind many of you that many of the clients that we do serve have problems with public benefits they rely on to meet their basic needs, Social Security, SSI, Medicare, and Medi-Cal. We deal with legal issues related to those benefits. Many of the clients we see are victims of elder abuse. Often the abuser is someone living in their home or even someone they know, such as family members, caregivers, tenants renting rooms in their homes, even their neighbors. We also have clients that we serve that have housing that is in jeopardy, or even worse, that are facing eviction. And we see a lot of clients that need really basic planning for incapacity or end of life with powers of attorney or advanced health directives. Most of the clients we serve cannot afford to pay a private attorney. In fact, last year, 88% of the Mountain View residents that we served were extremely low income per HUD guidelines. That is at or below 30% of the median income. We can't charge fees for our services or accept fee generating cases. The primary way we support our services is through grants like CDBG. So we so much appreciate the funding we've received from you currently and in the past, and we hope that you will approve the action plan funding recommendation for next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now I'll go ahead and, unless there are any questions from the commissioners, I will move the speaker over back to off the panel. All right, thank you. Okay, and then, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I'm removing them from the entire Zoom instead of just I'm so sorry. Sorry, staff. I think that's what I've been doing. That's why they've, I apologize.
Well, she was able to give her public comment.
Okay, I do. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I think
she might decide to dial back in, but
Okay, I hope they do. I was wondering why they left right after they spoke, and it's my fault. I apologize. All right, I am a Zoom baby. I don't understand how these things work. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So we will move on to commission deliberation and action.
Chair, actually, Chair, could you just formally close the public comment, and then we can move on to commission deliberation and action.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then at this point, we will close public comment. And hopefully those who want to rejoin will rejoin. And we will move on to the next part of this item, which is commission deliberation and action. Assistant to the city manager, do you want to help guide us through this process? Is a motion,
Yes, so you have 3 recommendations before you that was included in the staff report, but perhaps Michaela can share her recommendation screen again. And so to make the motions clean, I would recommend taking a motion and second and voting on each of the recommendations. So any one of the commissioners can make a motion and second the item recommendation number 1.
okay, but my understanding is we have to first deliberate.
Correct. And I was just going to say,
okay,
when you're ready, you completed your deliberations, and any commissioner can move and second any of the recommendations.
got it. And then can we do that sort of like one by one? So first we'll deliberate and make a motion on recommendation 1, then deliberate and make a motion for 2, and so on.
Correct.
Okay, so if the other commissioners are okay with doing it that way, I think that will make the most sense. So in terms of attachment 1, is there any item in that attachment that any commissioner would like to take and discuss? If you're physically making, because the shared screen is on, I can't see you. So if you could use the raise hand button on Zoom, that will make it easier for me to see if you're trying to speak. Okay, Commissioner Solomon, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a question actually for the recommendation number 1. I just want to make sure I understand this first recommendation. It says recommend and forward to City Council the action plan. So as I understand it, the version of the action plan that we received from March 28th is it is currently in the public comment period. So I just want to make sure I understand. I think I understand the recommend part, which is, do we as a body recommend the action plan is written, but I'm not sure about the forward part. If you could explain what that means.
Certainly, and I wouldn't be opposed to changing the wording if it makes more sense. I think maybe what I should have said is recommend and forward any additional comments. So I want to bring the action plan to them with your comments attached.
Oh,
and your recommendation.
Got it. Okay.
I think that's probably what was meant there. I don't know, Wayne, if you had anything else to add.
Yeah, it could be recommend and forward the report to the council for their consideration to approve with no changes. Or if you have any recommendations, we could capture that and then forward the draft to council that includes your comments. So if you do have comments, we will take them. If you don't, then we will also process that as well, with or without comments.
Thank you, both of you, for the clarification.
Are there any other commissioners that have a comment or a question about this item or this recommendation, sorry? I don't see any, so in that case, we can move forward with the motion for recommendation 1. Just for expediency, I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend and forward to City Council fiscal year 2022-23 annual action plan for CDBG and home funds as described in attachment 1. And my understanding is there needs to be a second and then we can vote. Is that correct? Okay, is there?
That is correct.
Great.
I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Vice Chair. So we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on that.
Commissioner Ball,
Yes.
Commissioner Wakidu,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sylvester,
Yes.
Chair Lynn.
Yes. Great. Thank you. Do I need to I don't need to do anything more. I can just move on to the second recommendation.
Correct.
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the second recommendation, which is recommending the approximately 1.5 million for capital projects made up of the CDBG block grant and available home investment partnership program funds for the acquisition and rehabilitation of the Crestview Hotel. Are there any questions or comments that commissioners want to make at this time? Again, please press the raise hand button since I can't see you all. I don't see any hands raised, but I have a question that I kind of wanted some clarification on if staff could address it. So I know the main the main project that would be receiving these funds, should we approve or should we recommend and then City Council approve for would be for Crestview Hotel. And I know you talked about what would happen if it ended up that the Crestview Hotel project didn't need the projects, but is my understanding correct that for now there are no other affordable housing projects that are being proposed to receive this as of right now, like no specific ones that are identified?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
We would have to bring back an amendment if we were going to do so. And we do have a very large pipeline of affordable housing projects. So I could see any scenarios for that, but we would have to bring back a substantial amendment to do so.
Okay, but right now, this funding is only designated or is only sort of like, sort of thought of, like isn't intended right now for the Crestview Hotel project. Okay. Okay, I see you nodding your head, so I'll just say that for the record. And yeah, thanks for clarifying that. That was my only question. Are there any other questions or comments? I don't see any hands raised. So again, for expediency's sake, I'll go ahead and make the motion for recommendation number 2, which is the recommendation of approximately $1,509,789, $738,112 of available CDBG grant, plus $771,677 of available home investment partnership program funds for capital projects, including the potential acquisition and rehabilitation of the Crestview Hotel, a project that would meet various housing needs and or other affordable housing projects. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Nwakidu. All right, so then we'll move on to the roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ball,
Yes.
Commissioner Wakidu,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sylvester,
Yes.
Chair Lyon.
Yes. Okay, great. So that passes.
Mhm.
We'll move on to recommendation 3, which which addresses what will happen if the federal HUD program grants an amount that's different than the estimated amount allocated, and so it'll be adjusted accordingly. Are there any questions from commissioners or any points of deliberation? Please press the raise hand button.
Vice Chair Sylvester has her hand raised.
Thank you.
Okay.
I had a quick question. It says related to recommendation number 3. Does that actually mean related to recommendation number 2?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. I was a little confused. I just to make sure I understood what was going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was an error I made in one place, but didn't fix in the other.
Okay, so I guess in that case, in the motion we make, or whoever reads it into the record, is that correct? We'll make sure to strike that and make it recommendation number 2 in the actual motion. Commissioner Ball, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes. So this recommendation as currently stated is only, if I understand it, referring to differences in the amount of money we get from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Are there any other sources of potential variability of the amount of income that we get, such as unexpected income from prior loans and things like that, that we should also account for in this?
That's an excellent question. My understanding is that if we receive more program income than we are expecting in a significant amount, then we would have to make a substantial amendment to allocate those funds because we aren't currently estimating that we will be receiving them. My hope is that when we have a better understanding of our loans going forward, we'll be able to make better estimates for our program income. And so that won't be the case. In this case, the funds will probably, unless there's an urgent reason for us to amend them for next year, we would probably bring them in the next year's cycle to be allocated.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? In that case, I have just a few points of clarification on that point that Commissioner Ball just asked. So that means that recommendation 3, as it's drafted right now, only addresses HUD, like adjusting or giving something different than what's estimated. Okay, I see you nodding your head. Yes, so okay. And then my other question was adjusted accordingly. I know in the presentation, I think staff mentioned that it'll just that if there's any change in the estimated, if there's a grant that's different than the estimated amount, the adjustments will just be made proportional, like according to every single project that's affected by that. Are these funds only, would this only really be a variable for the amount that we're talking about for the Crestview Hotel, or does this affect the other projects that we deliberated and sort of allocated funds for last year, of which there are funds for this year that are being sort of addressed here?
Thank you for that question. The same principle will apply to both, but you voted on a resolution or on a recommendation with this wording to apply to the public services funds last year. So that's why this is only describing the Crestview Hotel particular allocation this year, but the same principle would apply to both. If we get more funding from CDBG or home allocations than we expected, we will proportionally adjust it. But the proportional adjustment for the public services segment was already voted on last year.
Okay, great. And thank you for reminding us of what we did last year. So, great. Are there any other questions from the commissioners? I don't see any hands raised. So I'll go ahead and make the motion for recommendation number 3, but with the slight modification in wording. So I'll just read it into the record. Related to recommendation number 2, if the actual grant amount received from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for CDBG and Home Federal Program Year 2022 through 23 is different than the estimated amount, then amount allocated to the potential acquisition and rehabilitation of the Crestview Hotel and or other affordable housing projects will be adjusted accordingly. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Solomon. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote then.
Commissioner Ball,
Yep.
Commissioner Wakidu,
Yes.
Commissioner Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sylvester,
Yes.
Chair Lynn.
Yes. Great, so this recommendation passes with the minor wording adjustment there. So, all right, do we need to have any other motions for these recommendations tonight?
No.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, staff, for helping us work through that, holding our hands. In that case, I think this item is finished in terms of all the things that we needed to do for it. And I will move back in the agenda towards, to unfinished business. So we'll check in with the subcommittees. At this time, I see a chat. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Thank you, Wayne and Michaela, for your help on this item. So great. So we'll move to unfinished business. First, we'll hear from the Color of Law Subcommittee. The Color of Law Subcommittee will now present an oral update. No action will be taken on this item. Are any of the commissioners online wanting to provide an update on this commission's work, subcommittee's work, I'm sorry.
I know that look on Julie's face. I will volunteer to be tribute. Forgive me, I have been sick. I'm not feeling terribly sick at all, but I sound horrible and I might start coughing or sneezing in the middle of this. So I'll do my best. Bear with me. Lots of good stuff to talk about. So my colleagues do have to hold me up if I literally pass out from coughing, which almost happened at a meeting a few days ago with some of these colleagues. We have a lot to talk about, but I'll try to be brief. Starting with one thing we told you about earlier, we are still doing a little bit of our secondary research. A few of us actually went to the county record archive and dug through books of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, mostly 20s through 40s, looking for deeds with restrictive covenant language. It's literally just like a phone book. There's no really indexing. It's a mix of type of documents. It's not just deeds, it's other kinds of legal records. It's all kinds of stuff. So it was sort of fascinating to spend 7 hours digging through books wearing white gloves. We did find a lot of restrictive covenants in Santa Clara County. In the short time we were allowed to be there, less than 7 hours. We did not, I don't think, find any in Mountain View, but we know they exist because we have examples from other places. So that was interesting. We don't know if we will go back to do more because it is such a slog, but we would like to find records from Mountain View. It would just be luck. It was luck that we found any of them at all. But fascinating place to go if you're ever looking for county records, and very nice people. We have spent a lot of time on the online survey, which you've now all received an email about. I'd like to give a bunch of shout outs. Christina, thank you so much for your help working with the tools. We were deciding between SurveyMonkey and Google Forms. Long story short, we went with Google Forms. I'd also like to thank MEP for all of their translation help with a bunch of questions we had for them over a protracted period of time. I want to thank Julie for helping in the translation process. Another long story short, but Julie did some transcribing in between Chinese, with Chinese and Russian language surveys, which was amazing. Anyway, the surveys are out there in the wild. So my first ask is, hopefully you got the email. Hopefully you can share these with friends, family, neighbors, excuse me, faith groups, other service organizations you might belong to people who have at some point looked for housing in Mountain View. They don't need to have lived here. They don't need to still be here. It could be rental or ownership housing. We've had that question a lot. And it could be any time in the past. The survey will be good or stay open probably through May 1st. We're doing a little deliberation on that date right now, but our biggest ask to all of you is to help get publicity on that. And if anyone has any questions as to where we have sent it so far, just let us know. I'm not sure how to not violate the Brown Act, Christina, with that, if anyone has a question about that outside of this meeting. Or if that would be a violation of the Brown Act, if someone said, did you send it to Congregation Beth Am or something like that? I don't know. We have a spreadsheet where we are tracking. So is there a good process, Christina, if people want to ask us if we've sent a survey somewhere?
Sorry, I was listening and not preparing to answer.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
so if anyone has a question about where the survey has already been sent, feel free to contact me and I can consult the spreadsheet and let you know.
Thank you. But generally speaking, getting this thing in front of people more than once is not a bad thing. That's how people see it and pay attention to it. I'd like to point out that we're especially looking for communities of color and people in other language groups to take the survey. And I know there's a lot of interest in fairly recent Mountain View residents, but we'd also like to find longtime residents as well, as far back as we can go. People like Joan McDonald, who are in their 90s, who have some very interesting experiences during a very different time. So think big, think broad. And if you have any questions about that, ask me when I'm done talking, which is hopefully soon. We have started the process of collecting the more, well, very much just started the process of collecting the longer oral history portion of our research. We are starting to identify people who would like to talk to us, give us a little bit more depth than the actual survey would give. So really excited about that. The more we're talking to people, the more we're getting people saying, ooh, talk to this person, talk to that person. It's getting really actually quite exciting, the buzz that this is generating out there. And lastly, I just want to let everyone know, everyone knew that the date for the event where all of this gets presented was tentatively scheduled for May 19th. The subcommittee has decided that we should probably push that date out. I would say probably. We have agreed to push that date out to a date 2 to 2.5 months, probably. Just, on the other side of major summer holidays, summer break. Because of people were trying to return back to normal, because of COVID, because of technical hiccups, because of a variety of little things that added up to a big thing, we realized that that date was creeping up very quickly and that we'd be a lot happier and do a lot better job by pushing the date out a bit. We were all in agreement that, we'll accomplish more of what we want to achieve by doing that. So thank you to subcommittee members and Christina for going along with that. We will have an update hopefully next week as to what the new date will be. But in the meantime, anyway, thank you all for all of your support. I cannot talk more, but if you have questions, I'll try. And if Javier or Julie have comments, please throw them in.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any other, are there any questions from the commission on this subcommittee? Well, I don't see any hands raised or any questions from the commission, but thank you for that update, Vice Chair Sylvester, and thanks for working through your cold to give us that update. Sounds like you are doing amazing work, like on top of the amazing work you're already doing. So I'm still really looking forward to this, and I've already told folks that I know who are into housing issues, and I think there's a great deal of excitement within the community for this event. So when that date comes out, please let us know, and I think there will be a fair amount of folks looking forward to this.
I really appreciate you sharing about the buzz, because, you know, it's one thing for me to say, well, I've heard from people who seem really excited, but to hear that other people that don't know me are excited. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, we are still trying to figure out what it all means, but people are seemingly very enthusiastic to share their stories and share a longer oral history. So it's exciting, and more time to make it more so, I hope. Thank you.
Great. Any other comments or questions from the commission on this item? I don't see any. So in that case, we'll move on to the we'll move on to public comment. Although there are no attendees in the public comment list that I see. So, Assistant to the City Manager, am I allowed to just move on without taking public comment? Okay, in this case, I will forego the public comment since there is no public attending right now, and we'll move on to item 5.2 with the Racial Reconciliation Subcommittee, which will now present an oral update. No action will be taken at this time. Commissioners Ball, Nwakidu, or Webb, would one of you want to give us an update on the subcommittee's work?
Evan, do you want to take it?
I was going to do the very short version. We have a date, we have a host, we're moving forward.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, and then are there any questions from, oh, I see Commissioner Webb, you came on. Did you have anything to add to that update?
No.
Okay.
I'm going on for the next one, the next item.
Got it. Okay, I see a hand raised from Commissioner Solomon. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Could you share what is the date and the location? I want to put it in my calendar.
I don't have my regular notes here. I happen to just leave it in the office rushing back home. So I don't have the dates.
Commissioner Nwakidu, I can share the date and the location if
okay.
Okay with
so someone else has all the information. Sorry, I don't have that because I don't have my regular notebook.
So the date for the Civility Roundtable featuring Candidly Speaking, who will be our event facilitator, will be Thursday, June 23rd at 6:30 p.m. at the Senior Center at 266 Escuela Avenue.
Okay. Thank you.
I think one of the things we had talked about, if I recall, is the name to kind of throw out the different options to the group to see which one we might go with eventually. I think Commissioner Ball, you had the different naming.
Yes, it was in the Jamboard. Let me go and see.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, I'll put this back on. Apologies for doing the video on and off. I'm just like, I'm very wiped right now. So I'm like, okay, so we had 4 names that we were considering that have different positive or different things we liked about them, and we wanted to bring them back to the commission and get your reactions to them. We are not asking for a decision. We're asking for opinions and reactions, and we will take that away and then go make a decision on that. I guess what probably makes sense is I will just read these 4 different names, and as I go through them, take note in yourself which one, how they speak to you, which ones you like, which ones you don't, any of the reasons behind them. Version 1, Mountain View Connects featuring Candidly Speaking. Version 2, Mountain View Talks, connecting with each other about what matters. Version number 3, Recovering Connection, bridging the gaps between us. Version number 4, Bridging the Divide, connection in the age of COVID. One thing you will note is, despite the name of our subcommittee, we have de-emphasized race at this point. So while part of what we are trying to do is bridge connection across races and across different experiences, we are de-emphasizing it, at least at the level of the title of the event. I see a hand
Vice
from,
Chair, oh, Vice Chair Sylvester, I see you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Sorry, are you looking for feedback or questions now?
Yes.
Can you do me a favor? Can you read me 3 and 4 again? Thank you.
Option number 3, Recovering Connection, bridging the gaps between us. Option number 4, Bridging the Divide, connection in the age of COVID.
Thank you. I'd like to give feedback if you are willing to take it now. I'll just be blunt. 1 and 2 just bounced right off of me, like, I didn't have any emotional or intellectual reaction to them, so much so I can't remember a single word in either of them. But of 3 and 4, I love, especially love 3. I love the word connections, and I like the word recovering. Like the sort of post-COVID world idea. You're not centering on COVID, like boom, boom, this is about COVID, but you're hinting at something everyone knows about a lot. I love the word connections in number 3, probably more than any other part of it. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Other reactions?
I see Commissioner Solomon has a hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had a really similar reaction. Number 3 stood out for me. I like the focus on connection. I like the focus on bridging gaps. And number 4, the reference to the age of COVID made me think it was an event about sort of more related to COVID issues or bridging the divide. Then I was thinking, does that mean that it's like a digital divide? A focus on how to help people get internet access. So I kind of started to go off in a different direction in terms of what I was thinking about. So yeah, number 3 really stood out for me in a positive way.
Thank you. Chair Lynn, did you have reactions or feedback to share as well?
Yeah, I will join the title number 3 train, and I will say that was also my favorite. I liked the the first 2 were maybe not descriptive enough, I think. For me, Even though 3 and 4 have more words, I thought that they sort of fleshed out a little bit more what the event would be about. I liked number 3 the most just because it emphasized that we are connected and we are recovering that connection. Number 4, I wasn't as partial to, only because I think it sort of emphasize that there's a gap between us, whereas like I sort of like the idea of like, well, we are connected, or we were connected, and we're finding that connection again, versus like we started off far apart, and like let's bridge that gap, which I almost makes it seem like we're naturally disconnected, or naturally have gaps between us. So I like, for that reason, I like the idea of number 3. Great. Are there any other comments or questions? Does the subcommittee have the feedback they want on in terms of title?
I think that was pretty strong feedback. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Are there any other questions for that? Actually, I had another question. If Vice Chair Sylvester and Commissioner Solomon don't have any. I know it was tossed around before that you might need the rest of us in the commission as facilitators. Is that still something that you think you'll need, or do you have to wait for like RSVPs to know how many attendees there are? How is that?
So the facilitator that we will be signing an agreement with shortly, candidly speaking, will handle all of the facilitation for the event. So that includes the main facilitator as well as small group breakout facilitators.
Great. And they're called Candidly Speaking.
Candidly speaking, correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so that sounds like everything's taken care of, at least for now. It's really good to hear how far this subcommittee has gone. Commissioner Solomon, go ahead.
Yeah, a question occurred to me. Wonderful that there's a facilitator on board and that they'll be handling the main facilitation as well as the breakout groups. That sounds wonderful. I was just wondering about language access and if there will be interpreting services, and if so, how that will work for an in-person event. I know we've had that challenge for other events. You know, is it that everybody who speaks language X will need to be in the same breakout group, or what happens if people are spread out across different breakout groups, and how to have enough interpreters? I was just wondering how that issue of interpreting would be addressed.
So to answer your question, yes, we will have interpretation services available. So that's the first answer, the first part of your question. The second part of how that will be facilitated is still to be determined. Our MEP, our multilingual engagement program, they have protocols in place for how they conduct that interpretation for in-person events. So we'll be consulting with them to ensure that any interpretation plan that moves forward meets their policy, their procedures.
Great, thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, and in that case, I'll move on to the next subcommittee. There's no attendees in the public attendee box right now, so we'll go ahead and skip public comment and get an update from the Multicultural Festival Subcommittee, which will now present an oral update. No action will be taken on this item at this time. Commissioner Webb, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. I'm thinking everyone, only one that wasn't there was Julie, right? So Julie, you missed a heck of an event. It was amazing. We had 15 community booths. There were about, I said, at the count was 3,000 people showed up. So it was a lot of people. It was a nice flow. I'm not sure if everyone noticed, but I noticed that there was a nice flow of people coming back and forth. The day was a beautiful, beautiful day. Let's see, of the 14 groups, and I would like to say thank you to all of the commissioners that stepped up. You guys were all amazing on stage. Commissioner Ball, you didn't know, but I was listening to you from a booth, and you were really good. And everyone stepped in. They were able to improvise. They made it look really smooth because there were a few hiccups with some of the groups. There were some costume changes that weren't accounted for. But overall, it was a great event. The schools were represented well. The local community was represented very well. I've got a lot of positive feedback from different people that I've spoken to afterwards. But the committee is going to do a debrief with the organization group from the city next week. So if there are any other comments that need to be made or updates, I will let you guys know in our next meeting. Meanwhile, the paid groups did really well. I want to give a big shout out to Trio Sol de Mexico for their flexibility. They were extremely flexible. They were our stand-in group. We paid them, but they stood in between sets, and they did a really good job. The only hiccup was they had to leave, and we kind of needed them, but we figured that all out because we had a performer that showed up the day of that was not accounted for. Great young group from Peru, or they were. Their dance was based in Peru, the northern region, but they actually filled in really well as well. But it was a great event. I know a lot of people put a lot of work into this from the city, but I think they did a fabulous job. And again, the commissioners did a great job as MCs, and I want to make sure that you guys all get your deserved props. And our sound person did a great job as well, and that was it. And I know people are looking forward to seeing this again. Next time we'll have 10,000 attendees. Comments, concerns, confessions?
Vice Chair Sylvester, go ahead.
Just want to thank the subcommittee for doing an amazing job. Yay, subcommittee of one is a thing. So thank you for that. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up and doing wonderful things and being their beautiful selves. I hope the pictures speak volumes as to what the energy was like. It's hard to explain how electric the whole scene was, because people haven't been out, people haven't been celebrating, people haven't been, the weather is just turning nice. It was electric. Just a piece of feedback to the organizers. I sort of had a booth with Mountain View Historical Association. I didn't spend a whole lot of time there, but I can tell you that we had tons of interest, lots of really curious, interesting people come by. We had a global map where people could pin sticker where they felt their origin was, and we left that open to really wide interpretation. We had hundreds of little dots all over the map, and it was fun and engaging. The booth setups were great. Definitely, it's great to throw that open to a wide community of organizations. So keep that part up for sure. It was fun. Can we do it again next year? I know it's every other year, but can we just do it again one more time?
I'm with you on that, actually. I think it really does bring the community together.
Yeah.
In a positive way. Kids, adults.
Yeah.
If I did anything, I think that the biggest challenge is just the food piece. That was the only thing I thought was missing. But that was out of our control. We were trying to get people to go downtown, but that's something that, and I'll talk to the city about that when we do our debrief. Just, that was the only thing that was the challenge. Because you stay, you eat, you continue to enjoy. But then on the other hand, if you're getting hungry, you leave, but then someone takes your place. Because it was just it was a great flow. It was just a really great flow. Because that's why when you say 3,000 people, it didn't feel like 3,000 people, but it was a lot of traffic. People were coming and going. So, thanks for that feedback. And you did great, and you look fantastic.
Thank you.
Both you and Nirvana look great.
All the thank yous go to Nirvana.
Thank you.
My partner in crime.
True partner in crime.
Small c.
Commissioner Ball, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I did want to chime in that it was a fantastic event. Great work, Javier. Like really great work. I would love to see it every year. The food did feel missing. I was hoping there would actually be multicultural food too, that I could go to at least a subset of the booths and be like, okay, let me sample the cuisine from this culture. And if there were ways to do that in the future, I think that would be a big addition, but it was a phenomenal event.
I think we'd have to talk to the city about those kind of rules with food spoilage, all that kind of stuff. The OSHA people have to step in. But yeah, we could do a BYO.
A BYO, or are there like food trucks that represent multiple cultures? Could we get food trucks of a variety of cultures in there?
I'm sure there are. I've seen trucks from all over the world.
Yeah.
And they definitely come, but again, it's, and it would take we start planning a little earlier, but yeah. And I don't know if we'd allow food trucks on the lawn.
Or maybe we could shut down some of the streets or something for a little bit.
Yeah, everything's possible. But we'll take that, and I'll take that back to the committee when I have our meeting with them next week.
Yeah, and don't feel like that takes away from the event. Like the event was awesome.
No. I no, for sure. It was just that was like the only thing that was missing for the most part. But everyone was having a great time. The kids were great. The performances were great. People were happy and smiling and enjoying the sunshine. So if we can plan it every year on a beautiful sunny day, that would be great.
Great. Commissioner Solomon, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to thank, I think it was Vice Chair Sylvester who posted the photos. And so I did look at the photos and see lovely outfits and just the crowd to the extent that I could see it in the pictures. And I'm sorry I was not able to be there with you all, but I'm so glad to hear that that there was such good participation and that people were so energized and that there was the good luck of having great weather. So that's wonderful. Kudos to everybody.
Commissioner Nwakidu.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to everything everyone has said. It was my first time actually attending the Multicultural Festival, and it was really awesome. I think the best part for me was also meeting all of you in person beside Ida Rose. So it was really nice to just see everyone live. It just made me feel so excited and just felt so good. And I just carried your faces with me, when I came back home, I was like, oh, that's how they look like in person. Also, and yeah, and I've met Charlene before, but it was just nice to see everyone in that space, with so much excitement and participation and just engaging with the community and everything. So it was really exciting. I really, really liked it so much. I wish we could do it every year. So I agree with everyone.
Thank you for the comment. Vice Chair Sylvester, go ahead.
I was curious, do we look better on Zoom or in person, Nirvana? No
both.
comment.
But I love that I could hold people and touch you and, feel you, feel your energy. That's the best part, so.
And we have everyone except Julie. Sorry, I couldn't Photoshop you in the photo. So if we put them together, we could have us together. Yeah, we had Audrey and Christina in the photos. We had everybody. Can you make a composite or a collage?
Yeah, I'll just co-sign everything that everyone's been saying. It was an amazing event. I think I knew it was well attended. I didn't realize it was 3,000 people. So that's amazing. And I'll just add that I know I met up with a friend afterwards who had attended, and he recently moved to Mountain View, but he said it made him really proud to live in Mountain View now. So I think that was, there's not just a lot of enjoyment in the moment, but I think it added to a lot of community pride and pride in the city. And I'll also, to Christina and the rest of the staff, like, it was so much work, and I know it was a huge effort by the staff. So thank you so much, especially for, all of the hard labor that went into putting on this event. So it was amazing. Great. And is there any other comments or questions? Commissioner Webb, do you need any more feedback from us, or to take to the staff next week, or?
No, I think that's plenty. Like, everyone enjoyed themselves. So that's, at the end of the day, everyone enjoyed themselves. There's always a but everyone enjoyed themselves. And there's a lot of positive feedback came out of it. So yeah, I'll just make sure that they know, and I'll tell them we're thinking about doing it next year and see how they react.
Yeah, great. Well, my understanding was this was an annual event, but maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, it was every 2 years.
I see.
So, but I would say that the sentiments of the commission are probably echoed by a lot of people who would like to see it annually. So I think that is something that city staff is open to discussing and figuring out if that is possible.
Great. Yeah. I don't know how, if that would be too much of a ask for staff. And I know that the Performance Arts Center staff also had to contribute a lot to the events. So I'm sure there's a lot of coordinating with them as well. But I think folks like it. So great. In that case, I will again skip public comment because there are no attendees in the public comments box, and move on to agenda item 7, commission and staff comments, questions, and commission reports. No action will be taken on any questions raised by the commission at this time. Commissioners, is there anyone who has anything to report? Vice Chair Sylvester, go ahead.
2 quick things. I had the opportunity to have a last-minute tour of the Home Key site in Mountain View, and I highly recommend, if anyone gets a chance and has not done that, to do it. It was, I won't take up too much time. It is phenomenal. It was extremely interesting to hear how people work together to form a community, and how they take community meals, and how some of the people I met, some of the residents who were there. It's just a really peaceful, quiet, wonderful place. So if you get a chance to go, definitely go. And I also, lastly, want to point out, I ran into Fernando at Costco last weekend. He says hello, sends his love to everybody. He seemed to be doing great. And that's it.
Awesome.
Great.
So real quick, how did you have to sign up to go on a quick tour, or how did that work?
I had an opportunity from someone I knew had a last minute tour that they were doing through their work. They had an extra spot when someone dropped out.
Lucky you.
Well, I now have a connection that if everyone, I could see what I could do. I don't know.
Pull some strings. Pull some strings.
Pardon me?
Pull some strings.
Well, I think they really do like doing these tours. They have it down really well. And I think
Okay.
most of the community members really enjoy people coming to visit too. It's one of the things I was worried about, like, oh, I don't want to be invading people's space, but everyone's really chill and really like, who are you? You know, like wanted to learn about us. So that's good.
Nice.
I'll put you on the pulling strings list. How's that?
Yay.
Such that they are. Okay, great.
Christina, is there any way we can do that through the city? I think it's a county project, right? So would we need to ask the county?
So I do know that the Project Home Key site has provided tours to elected officials from other agencies and jurisdictions who have been interested in bringing this type of project to their city. I don't know beyond that, like how they facilitate tours, if they have, general members of the public or advisory bodies or commissions from other cities. So I'll have to inquire and find out what that process is and who is able to tour and report and share back with the commission.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Christina, if you'd like the name of my contact, the person I met at Project Home Key, let me know.
Yeah, I do. I actually do have their legislative and intergovernmental affairs contact. So, but thank you. If that doesn't come to fruition, then I will reach back out to you. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for looking into it.
Commissioner Solomon?
Yes, thank you. I love the idea of if this is where you were going, of the HRC taking a field trip. But I guess there'd be a Brown Act kind of noticing, and how would that work with public comment? Or I guess we'd have to figure all that stuff out, right? If we wanted to take a field trip. I just love the idea though, that we could, go and tour and see something together as a commission, if that's possible within the bounds of Brown Act public noticing stuff.
Thanks for reminding us of that, Commissioner Solomon. Are there any other reports from commissioners? I don't see any indications. So Christina, are there any staff reports for the commission?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on to adjournment. So I'll go, yes, Commissioner Solomon, go ahead.
Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I do have, thank you. I do have a question for, I guess it's a question for staff. I just wanted to know, I believe that at our next meeting, we will be starting to brainstorm, I can't believe it's already here, action items or ideas, I should say, not action items, ideas for our work plan for the 2022-23 fiscal year. And I just want to confirm if that's correct, because if it is, just we all have an opportunity to think further about ideas that we have and be ready to bring them forth next month.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks. This will be an interesting meeting. If there are no other reports from commissioners or staff, then I'll go ahead and move along to adjournment. So we'll adjourn to the next regular meeting of the HRC scheduled for May 5th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see you.
Good night.